we get into these ruts of doing the same thing over and over again, where there could be something really great on the other side that you haven't tested out yet, just because that's not your normal way of thinking about it.
Welcome to Honest Ecommerce, where we're dedicated to cutting through the BS and finding actionable advice for online store owners. I'm your host, Chase Clymer, and I believe running an online business does not have to be complicated or a guessing game. If you're struggling with scaling your sales, Electric Eye is here to help. To apply to work with us, visit electriceye.io/connect to learn more. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Honest Ecommerce. I'm your host, Chase Clymer, and today, welcoming to the show, another one of my mastermind members, a good friend of mine. I know I've talked about my mastermind a ton on here. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. But welcome, Kurt Bullock. How are you doing today?
Great. How you doing today, Chase?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm just watching GarageBand, making sure it's recording, but I'll switch back over to Zoom now. Awesome. So give the people a little bit of background on what you do over there at Produce Department.
Yeah. So Produce Department is an e-commerce marketing agency. So we don't really do development. We're really just focusing on things like paid traffic and email marketing with Klaviyo specifically.
Awesome. So paid traffic, we're talking about the hot button issues here. We got Facebook and Google. Are you guys doing dabbling much into the newer socials yet?
We're testing on a couple accounts. So like Snapchat, we've got the Snap Pixel and a couple ads running for one of our ad accounts for one of our clients. I haven't done anything with TikTok. I'm just trying to learn more about TikTok, but Snapchat has been interesting so far.
I feel old being like, I don't have a clue what TikTok's all about. And I've never felt that way in my life.
Yeah, TikTok's a totally new animal. It's not at all like Facebook or Instagram.
Absolutely. All right. So Kurt and I, obviously, we've known each other for quite some time here. And a lot of questions that I get from you, the audience, by the way, you guys can straight up email me, chase@electriceye.io, and give me ideas for podcasts, who you want on the podcast, or just questions you want answered. But people do often reach out and they're like, hey, I just want tips on how to be better at Facebook and Instagram ads. So I reached out to who I personally message when I have questions about Facebook and Instagram ads to get him on the podcast. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about kind of what can separate, you from a beginner and kind of help you really get some better returns. I don't know. How would you like to articulate that a bit better?
Yeah, I think that's right on. I kind of have been approaching this from the perspective of the changes that we've seen recently with Facebook, right? So right now, competition is high, traffic costs are rising. They're making changes to introducing CBO and the way that the algorithm works, trying to make it smarter, which is great. But this is kind of, it's changing a lot of things. And so when there's a lot of change, people get nervous. They don't know what to do. And so I think that ultimately, though, Facebook's goal is to get this, it's to get the marketplace working as well as possible, to be as profitable for us as it can be, which leaves us more time to focus on really the fundamentals, which is stuff like copy, creative, your testing schedule, stuff like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today.
Awesome. So we're going to learn some inside hints, and this is from someone that's managing quite a bit of spend every month. So this is, a real professional in the game these days. We're going to talk about how you can best write some copy for your ads, some ideas for creative and how to test that, and get a little more deep on testing itself. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Excellent. So in kind of the looking through that lens of so much is changing right now, if you're an advertiser, you might sometimes feel like you don't really know what's working and what's not working. It kind of goes in waves, right? And so I always think about it there's certain things that I can control, and then there's things that I can't control. Things that I can't control is going to be like the marketplace, right? The cost of traffic. The quality of traffic that they're sending me. I don't have any direct influence over that, although I can change targeting. But Facebook ultimately decides who's going to be shown each ad. Just regular ups and downs in the marketplace, right? Like introducing CBO, that's changing it's giving us swings in performance, both better and in some cases worse. So that's stuff that we can't control. But the stuff that we can control and really iterate on and get better at over time is stuff like getting to know our customers better. So that we can speak to them better, our ad copy, right? So copywriting, our offers and positioning, and then creative. That's what I like to focus on. And I think we should maybe start with ad copy. Facebook says that people look first at the creative, like at the image, and then they look at the ad copy in terms of like importance and where the eye goes. But I think that starting with ad copy helps us to have sort of like a framework that we can use to talk about the creative, right?
Yeah, I think they definitely influence each other strongly. I know personally when I'm on Facebook or Instagram, mostly Instagram, I try to avoid Facebook, and you can probably tell that by my absence in our Facebook group that I'm only in there about once or twice a week. But I know, like on Instagram, immediately I see an ad and then I go to the copy.
Right. Let's dive into copy a little bit then. So there's kind of a conversation that has been going on, especially in digital, which is sort of like difference between brand marketing and performance marketing. Ultimately, I think that with the way that things are going, where is becoming our biggest lever, it's not going to be so much about knowing a little hack or trick, to kind of get around Facebook's algorithm. We're going to want frameworks to help us think about how to get better at this. So one guy that I look to a lot is Ryan Deiss, and I've used this framework for ages. You can Google before and after grid Ryan Deiss if you want to get more information on this. But basically, this helps you sort of uncover different hooks and ways of thinking about your audience. So he breaks it down basically into two columns: before and after. And then for each of those, we're looking at it through the lens of have. So what does your customer have or not have, right? Before and then after purchasing your product. Same with feel, before and after, average day, and status. And he makes the point, and I totally agree, that we usually focus on have, right? This is the product. These are the details about the product. Come get it, right? And that's kind of the easiest, lowest barrier to entry, right? In writing ads. But he argues that focusing on the last three is really where we can sort of set ourselves apart from others. So that's on the feel, before and after, average day, before and after, and status. So really, this is kind of like thinking about the emotional side, internal versus external. Like how do your customers see themselves now? How do they want to see themselves? Right.
I feel amazing. My life is better. Things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, like, how do customers want to be perceived by others as it relates to your brand? So, there's and I have a couple examples that we'll go through down here, but it's kind of all about this idea of being transformed, right? And being part of the transformation of your customers. So if you can associate sort of an aspirational identity or a lifestyle with your products, then you can increase the perceived value of your products and your brands in the marketplace, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much half of the plan of every luxury brand.
Right. And, it helps you. There's a whole sort of class of ads that are really separate from brand, that are really product focused. Some drop shippers might fall into that category, but I think that to win, we're having to tell more stories, right? Create this story that our customers can buy into, or really so that we can sort of incorporate ourselves into our customer stories and think more about brand. So let's look at Ritual. Have you heard of Ritual vitamins?
I have.
Yeah. So
only because every lead is like, hey, like we want to be like them.
Right. So yeah, Ritual, led by Kat Schneider. They describe themselves as like a health brand driven by simplicity, transparency, and science. So if you're not familiar with Ritual and their vitamins, the capsules, like the actual vitamins themselves, are clear, and you can see these little beads moving around in them, right? Have you seen the vitamins, Chase?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So they're clear. The bottle's clear. The box has like bright yellow on it, and they actually smell like the mint. They have some like mint, scent in there as well. So light and fresh. And they're thinking, vitamins reimagined. So, all right, let's just go through and sort of that have, feel, average day, and status. And I've put together a couple thoughts. So initially, have, they start out in the before state with the traditional multivitamin, shady fillers, potentially additives in there. That's kind of just the basics of what they have, or they don't have a vitamin at all. But and then the after is sort of this idea of the vitamin reimagined. So clean nutrients, no fillers, no additives, vegan certified. It's sort of next gen, right? So that's kind of the most basic. That's just like, hey, you used to have this old crummy vitamin. Here's a newer, better vitamin. That's the simplest one. That's have.
I kind of see that strategy as the go-to for most intro marketers.
Right.
It's the easiest to wrap your head around.
Definitely. The others take a little bit more experimenting and thought. And in these examples, I have the benefit of being able to pull up the ads in the ads library and kind of have the answers to the questions. But really, it takes a lot of time to think through these, to experiment and to get them right. But let's go through these next ones. So feel. I've got a couple examples for feel. So before state is, with your old vitamins, you're uncertain. Like, does it have everything in there that I need? Can I trust this vitamin? And so the after there would be somebody who's confident, trusting that your vitamin has everything that it needs, that there's no gaps in sort of this nutritional plan, right? Another one could be that taking your vitamins is more like just a daily to do, right? It just check it off your list. It's not part of, it's not like something that you're looking forward to or that you think about really in any other way, as it's a have to, right? The other way that you could feel about it is like taking your vitamins is part of your self-care ritual, right? And they've designed the whole brand around that, calling it ritual, and to help you become the best version of yourself, right? So that's sort of thinking about the feelings, and that's sort of maybe in one layer deeper than sort of the have and before and after.
Mm-hmm.
Average day. Okay. So average day might be in the morning, you're cobbling together multiple supplements, right? You're having to pull together all these different things. They all add up to maybe a lot, right? Because you're pulling from 3 different vitamins. Average day after ritual is just, they're selling it as a super simple solution. It's all contained in ritual, right? So it's just 2 pills you take. And also it's an easy win because, there's so much around like daily rituals of successful people. And it's about, exercising and meditating for 30 minutes and all these things that are great. But taking your vitamins can be a real easy win, right?
Mm-hmm.
So giving you an easy win. Another average day is just when you take your vitamins, you have a fishy aftertaste, right? From like fish oil, omega-3s. And it said this leaves you with a minty aftertaste. So, and then finally, status. I think that the status is sort of rolled up in these, but essentially it's someone who's taking care of themselves, right? That's how you see yourself after. This is a self-care routine.
Absolutely. You know what the best part about kind of approaching it this way is, and I'm sure that I'm just stealing your thunder here, but it's like once you think through this process, you're like, oh man, you could just make this video or this, these couple images could tell this story for me.
That's exactly it. It's supposed to, this framework's supposed to basically give you, here's all the components that you need. Now just mix and match, like pull from one have not over here and the other have on this side, and you've got an ad. So if you go to the Facebook ad library, you can pull up any brand that's advertising and see their ads. So I did that for Ritual, and I pulled a few of their copy examples from their ads. So I'll read through just a couple here. So let's say we're talking about like shady fillers and additives, right? In the before state. Let's see. So vitamin industry is full of half-truths, mystery ingredients, 10-pill regimens that overload women's bodies. That's why Ritual's founder set out to create something better. Here's how she did it. And then there's an explainer video, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about this before and after. We're going to tell you about this kind of new after state in the video. All right, another one. So from D3 to omega-3, Ritual Essential for Women fills the gap in your diet, all with a fresh mini flavor and no fishy aftertaste. So this is all exactly like the concern, right? Is this going to have everything that I need in there? And then the after, it's trustworthiness. I think that trustworthiness and simplicity are sort of what they're getting at in most of these before and afters, especially when it comes to vitamins, because you have to trust the brand, right? You don't actually know if it's working or not. All right. Finally, a multivitamin you'll actually enjoy taking. The vitamin is designed to help you support your nutrient needs post-menopause, expertly developed with 8 key nutrients into minty fresh pills. And then this last one I'll go to is, it says skeptical. We were too, which is why we created an obsessively researched vitamin that even us skeptics could trust. So like you were saying, Chase, we're essentially just pulling from these before and after states here, mixing them together, and you can have a bunch of ads to run with, a bunch of different hooks to test out in your advertising.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. You've used that word twice now, hooks. So for someone that's just getting into it, what is that? What is a hook?
Good question. So I like to think of hooks as just an angle. So your hooks can be sort of emotional, like this, sort of these um, feel, average day, status, all these things. They can also, a hook can be more feature related. Let's see, a max speed on a tire, a stat, like the way that a camera works, it's whatever, 20 megapixels, whatever it might be. I don't buy cameras.
I mean, I might argue that is also in the have stage as well, because before you didn't have that and now you do have that. There's your correlation.
Yep. So I think of hooks as just essentially different approaches, right? That you can take, different angle that you can take.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I just have a couple quick examples that we don't need to go so deeply into, but one is tactical baby gear, right? So they say on their website, your diaper bag isn't your child's accessory, it's yours. So we're essentially going from, on their website, they say going from your girly diaper bag to, and then they have, all their imagery supports this, this image of sort of this super practical, military inspired, awesome bag, right?
Yeah.
And the status that you're going for is being seen as like fun dad, super dad. And they used customer reviews in their ads. One of the reviews said, from Call of Duty to diaper duty, this dad has been an absolute rock star with our little girl. So that right there is how they want to be seen as others, right? That's something that appeals to people that are buying this bag.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. So a question about your process. So do you, when you are working on ads for your clients, do you start with copy first and then try to find the creative later, or vice versa?
So I usually do an inventory and I'll say, so what do we have to work with? And so I'll hit out the lowest things first, right? So if they have videos that I can work with or lifestyle images, then I'll go and figure this out. But basically, after we've hit we've hit all those low hanging fruit, then I do like to go through this process. And then when we're creating new creative, I like to have already done this so that we're being purposeful in any new creative that we make.
Awesome. So you're like, hey, these are some cool ideas we had. You should create content around this, and you share that back with your clients?
Exactly. Yep. And I like to share lots of examples. So I'll pull from the ads library and take a screenshot and say, what do you think about this idea? This is something that we could do and sort of model, but in our industry and with our products.
Okay. Before we move on to creative and testing, though, I do have a few more questions here. So when you are looking at examples, are you looking like in the same industry or vertical, or do you like looking in different verticals to kind of get some inspiration, just to help people get their own ideas?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of looking outside the vertical. I'll always look at the competitors just to see what they're doing, but that's not how you get a sort of a competitive advantage, right? Is by doing the same thing that they're doing. So I think that it's pretty cool to look into other industries and pull from, some neat idea that you see a different brand in totally unrelated industry doing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's always it can definitely get the creative juices flowing.
Yeah.
And this is a great segue into creative, which I personally think is the differentiator between a brand that's going to make it on the platform with advertising and the brand that's not, is like creative. It's the hardest thing.
I agree 100%. So creative, let me just, I guess, start by sort of talking about how much you need. That's a question that I get all the time, right? And I think that the amount of creative that you need is going to be related to two things. One is if you're in testing mode and you don't know what the hell works yet, right?
Yeah.
Then you need a lot of creative just so that you can start testing things out. Once you actually get the gears of the machine turning, then I think that it's determined by your spend level primarily.
Yep.
So if you're spending a lot, you're going to need a lot of creative. Some of our highest spending accounts, we're adding new creative on a weekly basis is our goal. It doesn't mean that we're replacing all of our creative on a weekly basis necessarily, but we'll add new creative to the pool and kind of let it, duke it out right in between the old and the new creative.
Yeah, see which one's gonna win. It's like those old radio contests of which one's gonna stay the winner. This one's been the winner for 14 weeks straight.
Exactly. Yep. And one thing to be careful of is that your ads that have lots of social proof on them already are usually going to be the winner, just because Facebook already has so much data on that ad.
Yeah.
So, that's something to keep in mind. But even still, I'm always adding new creative there. And I do like to test creative before introducing it into sort of my main campaigns. Um, so I'll usually have like a campaign that has sort of my best low funnel audiences. So that would be like my newsletter list, previous purchasers, and then I'll have maybe one of my best cold audiences, which is oftentimes like maybe a 1% purchase or something like that, lookalike. And so I'll test it in both of those, and also, I'm looking to gather some comments and social proof from the ad set that's hurting my customers, right? If you show an ad to your existing customers, a lot of them are going to jump on there and say, "Oh, I have this and I love it," right? And add a bunch of comments to the ads, and then you can take the post ID from that ad and pop it in. Once it graduates from testing, you see this is a good ad, then you can graduate it into your top of funnel campaigns.
Oh, that is right there is a gem. Okay, so what he's doing there is he's finding a winning creative, and creative is imagery and video, to use a non-industry term. So he's creating a new ad with a cool video or with a cool photo or series of photos. Kind of depends on what ad you're really running, and then he's testing it in some audiences that he knows are going to work regardless, because these people are very familiar with the product. Once he sees one starting to catch on and it's got social proof now on that ad as well, so it's got comments and it's got likes and it's got shares, then he's repurposing that ad now at the top of the funnel to try to bring in new customers. He's using it for prospecting.
Exactly. And for people that haven't done this sort of thing before, part of that strategy is using the they call it the post ID from that ad that has all the comments. So you can retain those comments. And the way that I do it usually is I'll go to the ad, hit preview on Facebook. It's called like preview on Facebook with comments. And then it's going to give you in the URL, there's going to be a big string of things. The very last set of numbers before the slash, right? So the very last set of numbers is what you copy. And then when you go into a new ad, you choose use existing, enter post ID, and you paste those numbers in there. That way you're not erasing all the comments and the social proof. You can carry it with you. Is that clear, Chase?
Yeah. Well, I guess my only clarifying question here is are you making this first initial ad that you're trying to test out in kind of the middle of the funnel that's, people are already familiar with the brand? Are you making a post and then boosting it, or are you actually making an ad with an ads manager with that segment targeted?
I'm definitely making an ads manager. Then after you hit publish is when you can get that post ID when you preview the ad.
Gotcha. Yeah. See, that's something that always seems to, it's getting the ones that already exist and then using them to kind of elevate it. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's my strategy in terms of social proofing. And what you'll find is that social proofed ads perform much better than a fresh ad. So I try and social proof whenever I can.
How long are you letting a winning ad run? How high are you letting the frequency get? That's something that some people are looking at a lot.
Yeah. So once I've graduated that ad into my top of funnel, then I'm looking at usually two numbers. I'll look at my frequency, like you mentioned. And if I'm looking at 30 days, then I would not want that frequency to get over. Usually if I see the frequency getting over 2, then that's usually high for a top of funnel audience. The other number that I'm looking at, though, is the first time impression ratio. So retargeting, though, to be clear, for my retargeting, my frequency numbers are higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. My cold traffic, I'm looking to keep it at 2 or less generally. But the other number that I'm finding, and this has been released by Facebook in beta to most ad accounts, I have it in probably 9 out of 10 ad accounts that I'm looking at right now. And that is the first time impression ratio. So basically, this is a number that represents, okay, so we showed your ad 10 times. Of those 10 times it was shown, how many times was it shown to somebody that was a fresh face that had never seen the ad, right? Mm-hmm. So that's your first time impression ratio. I'm watching that when you launch it, it'll be 100%. And then you'll see that number start to go down lower and lower as it shows the ad to more and more people. And my threshold is usually around the 50% mark. Once the ad is being, that first time impression ratio is in the 40s, I usually see my performance start to decline anyway, which is another indicator, right, that you want to switch things up.
Let's be honest today. all of your customers are going to have questions. And what are you doing to manage all those questions? Do you have a help desk for your business? One of our sponsors of today's episode is Gorgias, and Gorgias is the #1 rated help desk for e-commerce. It integrates seamlessly with Shopify. We have installed it on a bunch of stores. It's also used by brands like Movement and Rothy's. And what it does is it takes all of your customer insights and information, brings it into one amazing dashboard so you can solve their problem as quickly as possible. If you want to give Gorgias a try, visit gorgias.link/honest. That's GORGIAS.LINK/HONEST to get your second month free. Awesome. And so we're talking about here just the top of funnel and prospecting. So with your goal with that is more just moving people down into the middle, into purchasing. How many steps is your funnel that you kind of play around with?
So it depends a little bit on my spend too, but I'm usually thinking about it. I'll have my top of funnel, and so just to be clear, that's prospecting. So that's going to be interests and lookalikes. I'm also doing a lot of even open targeting these days where I don't, this is only for accounts that have seen lots of purchases already, and Facebook has a good idea of who you're targeting. I won't even set a lookalike audience or interests. Maybe I'll just set, hey, if I know that it's men that we're targeting, I'll set that it's men. But otherwise, I'm leaving things basically open. And that's forming a part of my top of funnel. And that's kind of a side note there, but it's kind of an interesting thing because that never would have worked a few years ago, right?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. But so, now I might assign, I don't know, 15, 20% of my top of funnel budget to open targeting. I'm also using lots of big, broad, so let's say 10% lookalikes with CBO. CBO seems to work really, so sorry, and I'm throwing CBO up there. That's campaign budget optimization. That's kind of the new way Facebook is setting things up starting in February. It's going to be mandatory, apparently. It hasn't happened yet.
Fun.
Yeah. But so CBO works really well with big audiences. So back a year or two ago, I was looking for things maybe 3 million people tops, typically, maybe 5 at the very high end. Now, my CBOs all include 3 10% lookalikes oftentimes. Each of those have 20 million people in there. So that's 60 million people in this CBO, which just never would have worked before. But Facebook's done so much work on their AI and the algorithm that it's just a lot better at finding people. If you give it data, you have to give it lots of data though, and give it spend for that to actually work.
That's a good topic right there, is spend. What would you say is kind of like your threshold, not to work with you or anything like that, but if you're going to get started on your own and you have the time to commit to learning the platform, you've gone through Blueprint, which is free. Don't get started on Facebook without actually figuring it out. Go do Blueprint if you want to do this, but what do you think the budget you should be starting with, especially now that it's this is a mature platform. These clicks aren't cheap.
Right. So I usually think about it in terms of a multiple of your average order value. So it depends on what you can spend, but I think that if you are going to be successful and you want to have the best chance, I usually try and allocate at least 3 times your average order value to an ad set when I'm testing. So if I'm testing a $100 product out, I'll set up a new, ad set that has an audience in it and ads, and I'll say, I'm going to let this run for up to $300 before I decide if this is a winner or a loser. Now that becomes harder as you if you're working with really high AOV items. If you have a $2,000 grill, backyard grill kind of thing, you don't want to necessarily spend $6,000 to validate an ad. I think that breaks down at the higher levels, right?
Yeah.
But I think that on the lower levels, spending at least $100 per ad set on the very low level, and otherwise I just use average order value as kind of my marker. So I'm looking at 3 to 5 times average order value to test, and that kind of helps you think about your testing, right? In terms of setting aside resources. Do I want to test 10 ads at once, or maybe I should be testing 2 ads at a time over 10 weeks, right? Yeah. So it helps you kind of formulate your plan there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right there is just simple math for everyone listening of whether or not you can get in the game with these Facebook ads. Is your average order value, you're not going to be able to win on a $10 or $20 budget.
Right. Exactly. And your average order value, that's 1-to-1, right? If you earn $50 and it costs you $50 to make it, you're coming out, break even in terms of dollars in, dollars out, and even less when you talk about your cost of goods sold.
Well, I mean, but then you could also be coming out even more if you're talking about lifetime value. If you've got a product
Yep.
or products that your customers tend to spend more over the lifetime.
So that's a huge point, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I usually don't think about, like, when I'm just talking about like getting an ad account started, I'm talking about these simple numbers. But you're right. When I'm looking at scaling an ad account, then we're looking at lifetime value, right? It actually might make sense to bring in customers at cost, or even sometimes less than cost, right?
Yeah, I mean, here you could spin it any way, and that's like kind of the fun thing about analytics. But I think that there is validating that the platform can work for you. There's so it's like, all right, like we can make it work, $1 in, $2 out,
Yep.
or whatever, works for you. That seems to be what people are happy with at the minimum. And then from there, it's like you can only sell to the same people over and over. Like you need to grow your customer base, or your business actually isn't growing. So then figuring out what is actually good for your business in terms of scaling, like what is the highest you can pay to acquire a customer that you're willing to hold that risk for them to come back to you again, and then you get your return on them in the future. So are you willing to, your lifetime value is say $300, but your average order value is $150. Are you willing to pay $150 to acquire that customer and sit on them for 2 years to get that other $150?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Another sort of, side avenue is just thinking about your numbers and your break even. So, we had talked about maybe just validating that, your products work, your ads work on the platform, getting kind of that 1-to-1 return. A lot of times the next step I'll be looking for is, all right, so what is your break even given your margin? And an easy way to figure that out with just kind of big round numbers is if you take 1 and then divide it by, if you have a 50% margin, then it'd be 0.5. If you have a 60% margin, it's 0.6, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you take 1 divided by 0.5, that means it gives you 2. And so that's your break even ROAS will be 2x. If it's 60% margin, then I think that's going to be 1.6. So 1.6 will be your break even. So having enough margin there, you can see, is really helpful, because if your ROAS targets are so high that it's hard to reach them, then that's going to make it difficult to scale.
Yes, so much yes. And so let's talk about that now. And I think you tweeted this the other day, and I shouted you out. But this is like, if you have a $50 average order value and it's costing you $30 to produce it, like you cannot make money on Facebook. It's just too expensive these days.
Yep.
You need to get your average order value up, or you're not going to be able to do it. You need to get your margins up too. Paid acquisition is a channel that only works when you have healthy margins.
Exactly. So, a lot of times part of figuring out how to get paid traffic to work for you is finding, all right, so what's going to be sort of our top of funnel product, so to speak, right? Like one that has healthy margins, one that leads to maybe people making repeat purchases afterwards. These are all different things you can consider. And sometimes it's funny. I was recently working with a brand where, our goal was to get the average order value up. So we went with a product that was more expensive, higher average order value. When we compared that to a cheaper version of that product, in this case, the cheaper one worked better because the barrier to purchasing it was, better. And so we turned, basically the idea is that there was more margin on the cheaper product. And so we had more to work with. Now, of course, that's going to break down at the very low end of the spectrum. Like you said, $10 CPAs just don't exist top of funnel.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah. So yeah, it's important to think about those things and be strategic about which products you're selling, doing things like bundling and trying not to give away all of your margin with your 10 or 15 or 20% discount code, right? If you don't have that margin to give away.
Absolutely. So, we kind of just got into it there, and I just want to circle back to the third thing that we promised people we talk about, which would be testing. So let's give them a few tips and tricks there on testing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went through a little bit about sort of my testing strategy, but maybe, I'll talk about this when I'm testing. So I kind of have that process that we talked about, showing these ads to low funnel audiences and then my kind of best top of funnel audience. So some sure audiences. Mm-hmm. But then besides that, when I think about testing, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not just playing the same note over and over, right? And so you can think about that in terms of like different ad types, different messaging for sure. But let's talk about ad types. So there's like, I don't know, maybe eight different ads that I use regularly. And I've broken them down into like, intro videos. So this is where you're introducing the product, user generated content, comparison videos, like review and PR videos, video they call like obsessed, which is, it's another form of PR, but it's people that are essentially saying, I'm obsessed with this product. And you might have hypey music behind it or whatever it might be. But so you've kind of got those influencer videos and then unboxing or reveals.
So I want to highlight something there.
Yeah.
All of that ended in videos.
Very true. So, and I think you have the most flexibility with videos to actually do all these different things, right? I do rely on single image kind of images as well, but the story that you can tell with video is just much, you have a lot more leverage in it. You can tell a much richer story with video than with a single image for sure.
Yeah, I see single image performs well with retargeting people that are familiar, the warmer they are, that's fine. But if you're prospecting, you might just be burning money on just because it's so easy to get lost in the shuffle of the platform. Video just gives you a better opportunity because it's moving, and it's humans have lizard brains. If it's moving, they're going to look at it.
Exactly. Yeah, video is great. And then another thing that I'm sure but is just you can retarget video as well. And it gives you one more data point and one more audience to work with. So I'll retarget people that watch 95% of my video as, that kind of tells me they're interested enough to have watched that much. And that's another good audience.
Yeah, I would consider that hot traffic. I'd consider that bottom of the funnel. 95% of a video is a lot of a video.
Yep. Yeah. So that's another solid audience to use and another benefit of using video.
Absolutely. I know you talked a little bit about Ryan Deiss. You can find that probably on Digital Marketer, that information. Is there any other resources like people that want to get into this other than like Facebook Blueprint, so maybe some unbiased stuff that they can learn from? I read tons of books. I mean, if you want to learn more about sort of like storytelling and everything, Building a Story Brand by Don Miller is a good one that can give you some of those basics. But because stuff changes so much on Facebook, I just try and be a student of the Facebook ads library. So I'm in there all the time, and I try and, I listed kind of all those videos that I use. When I'm going through competitors' videos and clients' videos, I'll often find myself myself trying to categorize and kind of break it down just so that I can learn like, okay, what are the chords that they're playing? Then once I know kind of, hey, these are the key, notes or chords, then you can rearrange them and make your own song, right? But it's great to be able to categorize it and learn from it that way. So I'm always doing that. And I'm always thinking about which ads I actually stop on when I'm looking at my own feed. And once I find one, I'll usually screenshot it, on my phone, and then come back later when I'm in brainstorming mode and check out all those ads. That's amazing. Is there anything that you want to share with the audience before I let you go today?
No, I think that's primarily it. You just don't try and do everything at once. If you take anything from this, I would just experiment with some of those before and after questions that, the Ryan Deiss questions, see if that gives you some new ideas, and then just dedicate, one new piece of creative and just kind of get out of your box. Because, we get into these ruts of doing the same thing over and over again, where there could be something really great on the other side that you haven't tested out yet, just because that's not your normal way of thinking about it.
Absolutely. If someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
You can follow me on Twitter, just at Kurt Bullock, or at our website, which is producedept.co. Really bad URL.
The .coms are always expensive.
Yeah. I also have the produce department, I think, but producedept.co.
Follow them on Twitter. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Right on. Thanks, Chase.
You're welcome. I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show and sharing their journey and knowledge with us today. We've got a lot to think about and potentially add into our businesses. Links and more information will be available in the show notes as well. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, feel free to reach out and learn more at electriceye.io/connect. Also, make sure you subscribe and leave an amazing review. Thank you.